Hey, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have a special guest today, all the way from Florida. Mike Young, who's been an entrepreneur and a businessman throughout his life and has seen the topsy-turvy world of entrepreneurship over the last 2 decades. He did really well building a mortgage business company with about 250 employees at a point in time between 2000 and 2008. And then the financial downturn happened and he lost it all. He went ahead and suffered with debt for a while before he dug himself out of it to reinvent himself as the founder of the Makeover Master. Also has a top-rated podcast called Makeover Podcast and has authored a book, Made Over, How to Create a Personal Brand that will transform your business and save your life. And that's what his life's mission is right now, where he's been doing that and saving a lot of entrepreneurs and their businesses, working with them. So welcome, Mike. Glad to have you on board.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish I lived in Florida. I actually live in Oregon, but it would be nice to live in a sunny state.
You're right. I think that's my confusion, Orlando and Oregon.
It's all the same anymore. Like every place in the globe is closed right now. So
yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think I was like a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning. I wanted the entrepreneurial dream. I wanted to have money come in to my bank account doing something I loved doing. I didn't want a lot of complexity because I'd gone through a period of already doing that, where when you have 10 offices and 250 employees, a couple hundred emails a day, I had kind of lived the quote unquote American dream, where you go to high school, you go to college, you build a company, you have a house, you've got a wife, you got 2 kids. And yet I found myself in that place and I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't happy. And I couldn't figure out why at the time. That was probably 2006, 2007, 2008, in that range. And so I said, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do it in a much simpler way on my own. And I thought it was going to be easy. I thought it was going to be a quick journey to kind of rebuild a smaller team with less complexity. The financial meltdown in 2008, as you mentioned, kind of helped speed that up for me. But I found myself sitting in a home office alone, like wondering what the heck am I going to do next? And that's when I kind of began the true entrepreneurial dream of like having to figure out how to get things to line up with what you wanted and how to figure out the game,
So going back to your time when you actually ran the mortgage business, was this the first thing that you did, or did you do something before then?
No, before then, and I love the title of your podcast because before then I spent the first 23 years of my life thinking I was going to be a professional baseball player. I had no plan B. I went to college only because it kept me playing baseball. I was never really into school that much. And so I didn't have a backup plan. And at the time I was finishing college, I realized that the professional baseball wasn't going to happen. Just my talents and skills weren't good enough to make it to that next level. And so I had a friend in the mortgage industry and she said, I think you'd be great at this. And that's how I got led into the mortgage industry. And I never really liked when people kind of put their rules and regulations on me, tried to put me in a box. Mm-hmm. And so somewhere along the lines, I said, we can start our own company and make our own rules. And that led me to build this big company in 5 years. But again, it just kind of, that was kind of my journey and my path into mortgage. And then my path out of mortgage was the financial meltdown and really thinking about how do I align myself and my skills with something I'm really passionate about and actually want to do.
So if the financial meltdown didn't happen, do you really see yourself continuing in the same business?
If things were as good as they were in 2003 and 2004, maybe not. Because it was so easy back then. It was just like there was this huge boom and everything seemed easy. It almost felt like we were printing money every day. So the adversity and the struggle, I think I still would have exited the mortgage industry even without the big meltdown, but not without the adversity and the struggle. And really like 2004, 5, 6, and 7, it was like I could see the writing on the wall. We started to struggle. I had obstacles and new challenges that I was having trouble solving. So without that adversity, I may have stayed in the industry. But the financial meltdown was kind of like that final piece. It was like that catalyst that forced it.
Mm-hmm. The time period between when you got out of the mortgage industry and, you were going through the turmoil of, weaving yourself out of the company, and then also struggling with thinking what next, before you stepped into what you were doing next. What was that time period like? How long was it, and how did you cope up?
I felt like it was, I call it now like my self-discovery phase. I had an idea, like I would say, oh, maybe it's coaching for real estate agents, or maybe it's automated emails in a CRM for the mortgage people. And so we would have an idea, and we would create a logo and a social media and a website around it, and we'd try and sell it. And between 2008 and 2014, we created over 50 different business ideas and launched them, but most of them failed. Like 47 out of 50 failed, and 3 of them did actually pretty well. And so I found myself falling in love with the process and the psychology of why did these 3 do really, really well, and why did these other 47 fail, and what were the differences between the two. And I also feel like I had to go down a path. When the mortgage company failure happened, I went from liquid millionaire to $200,000 in debt in less than 6 months. Mm-hmm. I felt like I'd built my identity around money and stuff. And so I felt like my identity had gotten stripped from me. And I had a lot of internal dialogue around shame, and this is my fault, and I'm a loser. And so I felt like I had to go through that discovery phase to kind of, the way I would put it is to get to a place where I could fully accept myself again, where I stopped beating myself up over something that happened in the past that actually, in hindsight, a lot of people suffered during that time. It wasn't my fault, even though that was the story I was telling myself.
What about on the personal front? I know you had a kid who was about a year old when all this was going on, and so you had a family to support at the same time. So how did that work out? Did you have your family support you through your experimentation with the 47 plus companies?
Man, I look back now. First of all, I'm grateful that those things happened, because I think obstacles and adversity builds all of your strength and your character and your resolve, and all these wonderful things come out of the resistance that crops up during that time. I'm very, very lucky. I feel like that I had a wife that supported me, and she believed in me, and she allowed me to go through the journey. But it wasn't easy, man. It was like we not only did pretty well from like 2012 to 2014, but we kind of lost it all again. And so it's kind of like I felt like I was on a roller coaster. But I was just super lucky that the people closest to me, my closest relationships, my closest friends, my parents, my wife, they supported me and allowed me to go through the process, even though it wasn't easy. It was a tremendous struggle at times.
And then there's a lifestyle change too, right? So from a liquid millionaire all the way into debt, and then the experimentation phase until you find ground under your feet. There's a lot of lifestyle change happening throughout that period of time.
Yeah, the whole thing. I kind of view it as a big video game. It's like I had gotten trapped in the video game. I'd gotten stuck, and so how do you reinvent yourself? How do you allow, like we lost a couple of houses. I had a beach house. I had another house. I had a rental. We lost all of that. We lost all of our cars. We lost all of our money. We lost all of our retirement. And so I found myself in this place where my ego had been completely removed and stripped from me. And so it's kind of a magical place, to be honest, where you almost feel like you have a blank canvas to create your own painting again. And so it's not that it was fun or easy, but that's kind of how I feel now is you have to make adjustments, and human beings are amazingly adaptive of making adjustments. You can get through almost anything, even the stuff you don't think, but I had to sell cars. I had to be willing to make sacrifices and investments. And that's where I see a lot of people get trapped today, is they're not willing to take that step backwards and just say, okay, it's not that I'm quitting. I'm just course correcting. I've gotten into this little trap in the game, and I need to back up for a second and adjust.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've often heard from various people is, that saying, when you're handed a lemon, make lemonade. It's so easy to say it, but really, when you're really handed a lemon, to make that lemonade is so difficult, right?
Yeah, and I felt like I was handed cat turds and asked to make lemonade out of it. Like I was left with nothing. And how do you have this vision of lemonade, but you look down and you don't even have any lemons. And so that's an interesting place to be, but I think it tests your mindset. It tests your resolve. It tests your commitment. And like I said, now I look back and all of my skills and my character got built through that period of resistance. And so I'm grateful for it, but I don't know if I necessarily want to repeat it today,
You're right. So, one of the things is, your self-development journey, the depth at which it occurs has happened as a result of the adversity that you were in. If things were going well, you would be riding the wave, not knowing, the strength of your own character, right? So the strength of your own resilience.
Yeah, I think I would have, I think this path that we're all on is a journey. And I think if it had always been easy, I think it would have led to a place maybe when I'm 80 years old where almost I think I would have ended up in a place of regret that I never truly went after something I really wanted, because I never had enough adversity to get me to think about, what do you really want here? And so when it's kind of like you see these trust fund babies, where they, maybe they're born into money. It's like there's fairly high suicide rates in that, because they never find their true calling, their true purpose, their, something that really gives them energy. And so I'm grateful for going through that. But, that if everything was always easy, I think at some point near the end of my life, I would have recognized, like, man, I wish I'd had a little more adversity. So I did something that was meaningful and impactful. I think that's what we're all going for. We're all, why are we here? What's my meaning? What's my, why am I here? Because we're all kind of born out of thin air,
When you look back at your journey from the point that you're at now, what is the biggest lesson that you think you've learned and that you continue to apply?
Biggest lesson I've learned is that you can have anything you want. It's a function of getting clarity and deciding. So it's like you have to decide, and then you have to get very clear at what you actually want. And then it almost becomes easy to reverse engineer the process to guarantee that you get it. And so for almost a decade, I just never was answering that one simple question of, what do you want? And that's what I see with clients a lot of times. I ask them a very simple question, which is, what do you want with your business? What do you want? How does that play into your life? And people get frustrated, like I got frustrated, which is they're not able to answer that one simple question. And when you're able to answer that, then you can make a decision, and then you can begin reverse engineering the process to actually go get it.
Right. So tell us a little bit about your company, the Makeover Master. What's it about, and what exactly are you working on?
Yeah, everything in my company is built from my experiences. And so we essentially help businesses that aren't working. We help get them working. So we make it over and get them working. And there's a lot of them out there that are stuck and frustrated, just like I was. And then the second component of our business is, once it's working, we have a branding aspect to our business where we make it pretty. And so it doesn't make any sense to make the business all pretty if it's not working. And so it's kind of one step at a time. Let's get the thing working and bringing in consistent revenue and paying the bills and all that stuff. And then afterwards, let's get it looking the part. And so what I spend most of my time doing today is in strategy, business strategy, brand strategy, and helping figure out where those gaps are for businesses, and then helping them get unstuck and break through, so that then they can essentially get the business and the life that they've been going after for some time, usually.
And what kind of a team have you built to support this?
It's actually, I find myself in a weird place because I actually today have what I set out for originally. I've got a very small team. I've got a couple of graphic designers that work for us. I've got an executive assistant. I've got a website developer, very small team, and myself. And we're not trying to take over the world and have 1 million clients a month or anything like that. I'm trying to have real impact and real meaning with every single client so that they can make over their business, make over their own life in their own unique way.
And how do your clients find you?
We have some paid advertising. We have organic posting strategies that we use. I do a lot of podcasts like this to share my story, to help people realize like that it's never too late. You can always kind of course correct. You can make some adjustments. There are people out there that are willing to help you if you just simply take a moment to raise your hand and say, I need some help here.
And when did you begin with your podcast, Makeover podcast? I
started that, there was a part of my own journey where I began meditating and journaling a lot. And I was doing it every day. And I kind of looked down at this journal one day and I was like, gosh, this seems like there's a book here. This seems like there's a lot of insights I'm gaining that could help other people faster than it took me, to figure this stuff out. It's like I kind of was looking back to my 2008 self and I realized there's a book here that'll help people speed this game up. It doesn't have to take 8.5 years. It doesn't have to cost $200,000. And then I went through a phase as I was learning marketing and copywriting and advertising and all the things we have to learn with a business. I was listening to a lot of, I listened to in everything Russell Brunson had recorded. I listened to it in 42 days. And he kept saying one thing over and over again, which was, I'm doing this podcast, his marketing secrets podcast, which used to be marketing in your car. He kept saying, I'm doing this podcast to discover my voice. And so after I wrote the book, I decided like one of the ways I can help other people is people relate to stories. They relate to other people's breakthrough moments. And sometimes you never know when their light bulb's going to go off. So I started the podcast in 2018 or 19. I can't remember. I think 2019 actually. And it was really just this part of my journey where I wanted to kind of reinforce a lot of my own learnings and wisdom while sharing other people's stories to help people that feel tremendously stuck or depressed like I was in 2008.
And what about the book? The book came before the podcast?
The book came before the podcast. I did the book. I held my own event in Arizona, and then I started the podcast. And it was. I look back now. I think I did certain parts of the journey right. It doesn't make any sense to try and coach other people through the process unless you've done it yourself. It doesn't make any sense to promote yourself on a podcast or share your journey with other people if your business is still broken. So there were certain things I did right, which is I got the business fixed. We made it pretty ourselves. I wrote the book, and then we started the podcast after that.
One of the things that I was actually looking at your website, and I was looking at all the testimonials. And one of the things that stood out for me was empathy, truly understanding what my business was and helping me fix it. That's what, that was the theme across a lot of the testimonials, which is very different from, more of a standard approach where somebody goes in as a coach or as an organization and says, hey, here's my formula. Let's look at applying it. And I don't see that with you. And I think probably that's one of the secrets of your success. What do you have to say about that?
I do have empathy because I struggled for so long. I know what each stage feels like, and I know how painful it was for me. And one of the things I took $200,000 plus in courses and knowledge. I bought everything. I bought Marie Forleo and Russell Brunson and Amy Porterfield and Donald Miller. And I bought all this stuff and all these books. But the one thing they never gave me was direct advice based on me. And so when the programs are great. I learned a lot from all of these programs. But what I learned was it was generic advice on their system and methodology And sometimes that system and methodology doesn't align with the business owner's energy and their skills and their talents and their budget and their everything that they have going on. And I think that was the turning point for me, is when I got it aligned with who I was, everything took off. I was able to completely unwind 8.5 years of going backwards in 18 months. And it was the moment that I got direct help, direct strategy based on me. And so I decided I wasn't going to do this generic course. It was going to be some informational knowledge along with direct strategy and help. Because, and the way I would explain that to anybody in your audience is, it doesn't make sense to create a strategy that all involves paid traffic if you don't have a budget for it. It doesn't make sense to have a strategy that involves putting yourself on a podcast if you hate your own voice and you're deathly afraid to put yourself out there. And so you have to align the strategy with the business owner and who they are, or else it doesn't work.
One of the things I'm curious about is, you mentioned, one is coaching, right? So there's two kinds of people. There's the kind of people who want to self-coach, who don't want to spend a whole lot of time or money or resources on other coaches out there, but they want to self-coach themselves through books or whatever various media that are available out there. And then, like what you did, you went all in and said, I'm going to splurge and spend this money to grasp whatever I can from the people that are visible out there in the coaching, / inspiration world.
Yep.
Did you ever, and you mentioned direct strategy, for instance, and did you ever spend time seeking direct coaching from any specific coaches as such?
Yeah, at the end, that was the turning point for me, because what I learned was I was buying all these $97 and $1,000 and $2,000 courses with no direct help. And you hit the nail on the head. It was like, I didn't want to invest $20,000 or $30,000 into a really high-end coach or a mastermind or any of that stuff, or I couldn't afford it at the time, which is very normal. But it was actually the longer path, because the $97 program would get me one step. And before I knew it, I'd spent 8.5 years and $200,000. When I got direct help, I spent about $60,000 on 2 direct mentors. And in 18 months turned everything around. And so it was the way I describe it is, it's like having a thought and saying, I need an answer on this question. And I'd spend maybe 3 or 4 hours on Google to sift through the information and then find the answer and then make sure it aligned with me. And so maybe I'd spend a whole day to get one answer.
Right.
But when I hired the direct help, it was a lot more quote unquote expensive, which turned out to be cheaper. But I was getting my answers instantaneously because those people had already done what I was trying to do. And so I thought it was cheaper to go the other way or less expensive, but it turned out to be way more expensive because it cost me 8.5 years versus 18 months and $200,000 versus $60,000.
So, one of the things, I think there's a very thin line between gaining knowledge and then taking action, right? Yeah. And a lot of these coaches out there, they talk about taking massive action. That's what they talk about.
Yeah.
And then I think the difference lies between who takes action and who does not. It's like, jumping over a hill in order to get to the other side.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? Even with your clients, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back at my past, even saying this to you, it's like I find myself getting frustrated because I did both journeys, right? It's like I not only took the path of trying to figure it out all myself, but then I still ultimately had to hire direct help. So I took both paths and I know what both of them feel like. But to answer your question, there's information, and then you can convert information into knowledge, which is you processing the information for yourself. But the only way to gain true wisdom is to add a third component to that, which is action. You need direct experience with the information and your knowledge of it. You have to apply it before you gain wisdom. And so that's why so many coaches talk about action, because you need to, it's like, I can tell you that a stove heats up food. And I can tell you that if you touch the stove, that this particular point is going to make it, it's going to be hot and it's going to hurt. But actually putting your hand on the burner and burning the crap out of your hand one time, you have a completely new understanding of what that feels like. And so you have to go from just information that's out there to converting it into your own knowledge. But you have to take action before you have wisdom. And you have to have wisdom before you ever try and help somebody else. You have to have an understanding. You have to understand exactly, like that's why I have these testimonials and that Mike knows exactly how I feel, because I do, because I was taking the action. I have my own understanding, my own wisdom around it. And I'm able to tell people I know how you feel because I do.
And how much of hand holding do your clients expect from you, and how much do you give?
It's a very hard thing because I'm very empathetic and I want to help people so badly. I've had to learn this over time, that sometimes the greatest lessons come when I don't hold their hand. And so there are moments, it's kind of like I used to coach baseball, and I've been on a lot of baseball teams, but every person's different. There are some people that you need to yell at and they're going to respond to that in a positive way. And then there's another player on the team where if you yell at them, it's going to crush them and it's going to stop them from action. So it's about the individual, and it's a fine line of sometimes you got to hold their hand and just do some things for them to help speed it up. And other times you have to leave them alone and allow them to go through their own little bit of struggle, because that's going to shape their skills and character. So it's a balancing act. And I hope I do a good job at it. I hope my clients would say I do a good job at it, because sometimes I leave them alone to struggle for a little bit so that they build their own strength and character and resolve out of it.
And then there's two aspects to it, right? With any client, whatever they're trying to do, whether it's their own business or they're trying to get into the coaching space or trying to become an influencer, there's a creative side of the business, and then there's a technical side. Some people are really great on the creative side, and obviously some are great on the technical side.
For sure.
It's very rare to find somebody who's really skilled on both ends, because that would be phenomenal. If somebody gathers both the skills, they would be really, really successful. What do you see? Do you see people coming to you with both of them in terms of the support that they need, creative as well as technical, or how do you deal with that?
I see. I think it's as simple. It's very simple. It doesn't mean it's easy. We all have strengths and weaknesses. It's about tapping into things that give you energy and that are in alignment with your strengths, and then finding individuals that fill the gaps and support your weaknesses. And so at the end of the day, I'm human too. I'm really, really good at certain things, and I'm really awful at certain things. And so if I can recognize that I'm not very good at this, or it's not aligned with my natural strengths, I try and find a person that is maybe the best money manager of all time, or maybe they clean houses better than any person in the world. And so I try and put those people into my life so that I stay in my unique zone of genius and they can stay in their unique zone of genius. And then you can build kind of this, what strategic coach, Dan Sullivan's program would call a unique ability team, where they might not necessarily be on your actual team. But I have a ton of people that are wizards in Facebook ads. I have people that are wizards in, mindset and psychology, and they're all kind of on my quote unquote team. And they're people that I can reach out to and tap into their strengths when I'm struggling in that area. And so I think it's about I think most of it is about recognition and self-awareness. And if you can become aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, what you want and what you don't want, the game starts to become a whole lot easier.
Like you mentioned, you've been on a roller coaster ride. You've seen the ups and the downs. You've been in situations where you did not know what the next step was to take. And obviously, I'm sure there would have been some fear, and then you worked through it. Now, based on where you're standing today, what is the one thing that you most fear at this point?
I think it's the same thing I feared in the beginning, which is a sense of regret. I fear getting complacent and comfortable. And what I mean by that is I want to always be evolving and improving. I think the biggest thing I fear is waking up 10 years from now and being the exact same person I am today. I'm not trying to get somewhere new or escape my life anymore like I was in 2008. But at the same point, I want to be a different person a decade from now, a more evolved person. So I don't want to get to the end of my life and have regrets. my grandma is nearing the end of her life. And I asked her a year ago, I was like, is there anything you regret? And she only had a couple things, but it was, I regret not traveling more. I regret that I didn't do this more. And I want to get to the end of my life and basically say, no, I don't have any regrets. I did everything I wanted to do and set out to do on this life. I at least attempted to do it and took the chance to go after it if it was important to me.
And what are you most thankful for?
That I'm still here. There were moments in the journey that were extremely difficult. And I don't want to create this illusion like it was easy, because it wasn't. But I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for the relationships I have. I'm grateful for my team and my business. And I'm grateful that I get to help other people do something faster than it took me.
And what do you look forward to?
Yeah, I find myself in a little bit of a weird place because it took me so long to get here, but I look forward to every moment, being present. Like right now, I'm just present with you, and I'm not thinking about the bills I got to pay. I'm not thinking about the next thing I've got to do in my business. So I'm looking forward to how this plays out and how many different people can I impact, and then my impact with them can then impact their people. And so how can I share my knowledge and wisdom and impact more people by just being present with every single situation?
And what would you like your legacy to be?
I think I'm building it. I think I've been building it for 40 plus years. I think I would like to look back at the end and have people say that he really cared. He was empathetic. He knew what he helped me discover the thing that I seemed to be stuck on and help me move past it. So I kind of want to be seen as that coach or that mentor that was the turning point for people.
That's pretty awesome. Well, this has been great, Mike, having you on the show. Before I let you go, one thing that I'd like to ask you is any takeaway for the listeners that you would like to leave with them?
Yeah, I leave a lot of my podcasts this way, which, as far as the takeaway, which is it's okay to ask for help. Your past does not define you. You can always kind of write the rest of your story, so to speak. And so it's okay to raise your hand and ask for help when you're stuck. And the fastest way that I've found to speed up this process, whether it's you want your business to work or you want your life to work in some way or whatever it is to get clear on what you want, find someone that's already done it before you and raise your hand and ask them for help. Hire them as a mentor or a coach, or surround yourself or model their habits and behaviors because they've already done something you want to do. And that's a much faster path to success than generic courses and books and knowledge consumption.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your wisdom.
It's my pleasure.
Look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, and I would just say if anybody wants to reach out, they can reach me at themakeovermaster.com or Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and we do all sorts of like free reviews for businesses to kind of help get them kickstarted, so they can find that on our website.
Sure. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode. Please do make sure to subscribe to Plan B Success Podcast so that you can get alerts about these episodes coming out 3 times a week. You get to hear an inspiring interview and some inspiring talk that will move the needle for you on your way to success. Thank you very much.